On the day of the Christmas party that would wrap up the year. After arriving late, I noticed a female subordinate standing alone outside in the cold winter of December. What's going on? It's a gathering for those with high academic credentials only. They told me, with just a high school diploma, to wait outside. I wonder who told her that. Seeing the female officer shivering and holding back tears, I couldn't just stand by. Education isn't everything. It didn't seem right that her hard work, despite her diligent efforts at work, wasn't being recognized. And then, I quietly reached for my phone in my pocket. My name is John. I work for FBI as an executive assistant director, responsible for overseeing the branch. Susan, have you gotten used to the atmosphere in this branch? Yes, I was quite anxious when I transferred from the field office to here at the FBI headquarters, but now I feel secure in my work. This must be such a wonderful place to work that you wouldn't consider working anywhere else, right? I'm not joking, I really think so. I believe it's all thanks to you, John. Me. Yes, everyone here is exceptionally kind, but I believe it's because we have you as our boss. If that's the case, I'm glad, not sure, though. You made my job so much easier and has helped me tremendously. I'm glad to hear that. I know you have a family to take care of, so don't overdo it. Thank you so much. Raising your son all by yourself, I think you're doing something truly commendable. I'm just doing what needs to be done. Well, that might be true, but I remember you said you weren't confident in your physical strength. Thank you for your concern. I don't have kids of my own, but I understand the difficulties of balancing work and household chores. Oh, do you? When I was in high school, my parents passed away in an accident. I'm sorry to hear that. I had a much younger brother that I worked very hard to provide for. You had such a difficult time when you were still a teenager. Of course, I think it would have been impossible alone. Without the support of those around me, who knows where I'd be. People are willing to help out because of who you are, John. You're giving me more credit than I deserve. I'm now the boss, but I don't think it's all on my own. The support from relatives, friends, and various people is what made me who I am today. That's why I want to be kind to my subordinates. Even as an executive assistant director at the FBI, I've never forgotten that. Without those around me, I might have given up back then. You've overcome many hardships to be where you are today, John. It sounds cool when you put it that way. Seeing Susan, who transferred from a local field office, reminds me of the old days. Somewhere in my heart, I might be seeing a reflection of my younger self. One day, the topic of our annual event came up. It was a man named Mike who first suggested it. John, the Christmas season is upon us, isn't it? That's right, I had almost forgotten. I'll look up some nice places. No, I've already made a reservation. Really? You've already booked? That was quick. Since I am a Harvard Law School graduate, and I passed the FBI exam with top honors, he said. Does that have anything to do with booking the Christmas party? If I do say so myself, I'm a very gifted and competitive person who wants to take the leadership in doing many things. Regardless, it's always appreciated that you invite me every year. It seems like the Christmas parties are usually held among colleagues of similar ranks. Exactly. Not everyone gets invited, so I'm always happy to be included. With someone as well respected as John, it's only natural. Anyway, John, please make sure you come. I've booked a special place. Thank you, I'm looking forward to it. Mike was elitist and proud, but a man who could get the job done. I trusted him to handle things. But at that time, I had no idea what was about to unfold. On the day of the Christmas party, I had to contact Mike unexpectedly. I'm sorry, but something urgent came up at work. Is that so? Tough break, John. It won't take too long, so I'll probably be late. Is that okay? Not a problem at all. Please get in touch later. Thanks. I'll wrap up as quickly as I can and head to the venue. I hurriedly began working on the unexpected task. It was more extensive than I anticipated, and by the time I finished, the Christmas party had already started. Man, I need to hurry. I rushed to the venue that Mike had booked. There, I found someone standing alone outside the venue. Is that you, Susan? Hi, Sean. Good evening. What's going on? It's cold outside. Why don't you go inside? Well, it's just that. Susan seemed hesitant and troubled. Let's go in together anyway. I'm sorry, I can't. What do you mean you can't? Why? Mike and some others told me to wait outside. What? Why? Because I only have a high school diploma. They don't want to drink with someone of a lower education level. What? Did they really mean that? Yes. But I only have a high school diploma too. Maybe, but I guess it's different for you, John. You're the boss. That's not the point. You were invited to the Christmas party, weren't you? Yes, I was invited, so I came. And yet they told you to wait outside. That doesn't make any sense at all. I know, but... Susan looked like she was about to cry. Considering it was the Christmas season, it was extremely cold outside. It was utterly unreasonable to make her wait outside. Susan, let's go to a different place. What? There's no need to wait here for a Christmas party. There are plenty of other nice places we can go to. Let's go. But, I was told to wait. There's no need to wait. You don't have to comply with such unjust demands. But shouldn't you go, John? I have no desire to drink with people who would treat you like this. I'm sorry, this is all because of me. What are you talking about? You've done nothing wrong. There's absolutely no need for you to apologize. Thank you. Let's go. It's too cold to stay outside any longer. You might catch a cold. Yes. I quickly arranged for a place and headed there with Susan. We caught a taxi and hurried in. It's a bar that is dedicated to creative dishes, and everything they serve is top-notch. Really, I'm looking forward to it. Still, I'm appalled by Mike and the others' behavior. Oh, by the way, do you need to let Mike know? I called him earlier and even sent a message, but there was no response. I see. The Christmas party must be in full swing. He probably hasn't noticed. I guess so. Don't worry about it. They have their own thing going, and we'll have our fun. You're right. I'm sorry for being so down. Anyone would be upset after what happened. It's completely understandable. I'm really glad you're here, John. You're welcome. Hey, looks like we've arrived at the place. I paid the taxi fare and got out with Susan. Well, we should greet them. Greet who? You'll see once we're inside. I opened the door to the establishment and entered with Susan. Hey, John, we've been waiting. Michael, sorry to keep you waited. What? What is Michael here? It's a year-end party for the senior management. I was supposed to drop by later. I had no idea. John, who's the lady with you? This is Susan, who transferred to my branch from the field office. Would it be all right if she joined us? Come on, let's have a nice drink since we're here. Thank you. At a Christmas party filled with senior management, Susan was initially quite nervous. However, her tension gradually eased. Susan, do you also have a high school diploma only? Yes, I do. I'm a bit embarrassed to admit it. What's there to be embarrassed about? Everyone here at this Christmas party is a high school graduate. Really, is that so? Just because someone's part of the senior management doesn't necessarily mean they're highly educated. I see. Maybe I had some prejudices. Many of us here have struggled with family issues. I think there is a lot we can relate to when we hear about the circumstances you just described. That's such a generous thing to say. Thank you. I'm relieved to see you're getting along well. John, have you always been close with the senior management? You know, I've even been invited to their Christmas party. We've known each other for a long time, and we have a good connection. Compared to when she entered, Susan seemed much more relaxed. She must be delighted to find common ground with people she thought of as being out of her league. She was sharing more personal stories than she usually might. Yeah, you seem to have a lot in common with John, don't you? Really? In what ways? Oh, in many ways. What do you mean by that specifically? Well, no need to delve too deeply into that. Let's just enjoy our drinks for now. Oh, okay. Despite the terrible treatment from Mike and his gang, the Christmas party here turned out to be a lot of fun. The wonderful time flew by quickly, and it was time to disband. See you tomorrow, John. Jess, I'll be heading off now. Good night. Since we were headed in the same direction, Susan and I shared a taxi back, just like on the way there. John, thank you for today. I had a great time. I enjoyed it too. The senior management seemed to like you. I was surprised. I always thought people at the top were almost out of reach. That's an exaggeration. You found a lot of common ground, didn't you? Yes, I did. It made me really happy, and it motivated me to work harder. Great. I'm looking forward to seeing what you achieve next, Susan. Please, don't put pressure on me like that. It makes me nervous. After such a conversation, we parted ways. I have work tomorrow, so I better get some sleep soon. The next day, I went to work as usual. Then, someone from the senior management visited our branch. It was some of the members who attended yesterday's Christmas party. Good morning, Susan. How are you doing? Hi, Michael. Good morning. I had a lot of fun yesterday. You seem a bit nervous without the alcohol, don't you? While Susan was greeting the senior management, one person hurried over. It was Mike. Michael, good morning. You look great as always. And you are? I'm Mike, a Harvard Law School graduate and future head of the FBI. Oh, okay. The senior management seemed visibly perplexed by Mike's sudden self-promotion. Despite the circumstances, Mike continued to ingratiate himself. He probably thought that by winning favor here, he could secure a faster path to promotion. By the way, are you acquainted with Susan? Well, yesterday we were at the same Christmas party. I see, but I'd advise against associating with such individuals. What do you mean by that? Michael glared at Mike, but he seemed oblivious to it. Mike pointed at Susan and began. She's a high school graduate and always a handful. Is that so? It slows down work, and it's really troublesome. Working with capable people like you must be entirely different. Do you think that has anything to do with educational background? Of course, it's directly proportional to a person's value. You understand that, don't you, Michael? Are you truly saying that from the bottom of your heart? Absolutely. Anyone who says education doesn't matter is just making excuses for their lack of it. What's your opinion on people with lower educational backgrounds? People with middle or high school education are not even human. They are the absolute bottom, never reaching the level of a Harvard graduate like myself. You're quite confident, but you clearly didn't understand anything. Excuse me. One's excellence doesn't require a formal education. I'm a high school graduate myself. Wait, are you high school graduate? That's what I said. Is there any problem with that? No way. How could that be? What's wrong? You are joking too much. How is it possible for someone as outstanding as you to be a high school graduate? I'm serious, though, not joking. Really? Your highest level of education is high school? Yes, according to her theory. I suppose I'm not human. No, I didn't mean that. Well, what's the matter? Isn't that what you said? Well, that was just, you know. Mike's previously smug expression turned pale in an instant. It seems he finally knew he had gone too far. I'm terribly sorry. Someone like you is the exception among exceptions, a truly special individual. So there are exceptions among those with lower education levels. Yes, there are two kinds, you and everyone else. You're flattering me quite a bit, aren't you? Of course, people like Susan here, who are useless, are a completely different breed. It's almost insulting to even compare them. So it's because you can look down on others like that, that you do what you did yesterday. What did I do yesterday? Oh dear, you're not going to pretend you don't remember such a terrible act, are you? What are you talking about? I don't recall meeting you yesterday. Who said anything about me? I'm talking about what you have done to Susan. What? Oh, what was that again? Even though you invited her to the Christmas party, she wasn't allowed inside the venue, right? No, there was a little situation with that. What kind of situation? I'm all ears. I'm expecting an irrefutable argument. Well, I mean, after all, our culture is a predominantly male world, right? I'm listening. So, since the members at yesterday's Christmas party were all men, I thought Susan might find it boring. But you knew who the attending members were from the start, didn't you? Well, yes, but if she was just going to wait outside until the Christmas party was over, wouldn't it have been better to send her home? Oh yes, that's true. I hadn't thought of that. Michael, you always have such a unique perspective. Are you praising me or mocking me? Absolutely, I'm praising you. You thought that would please me. Michael glared at Mike with a look that could scare off like a demon. Overwhelmed by his presence, Mike began to cry like a baby. I'm so sorry. I'm disappointed in your character. It's a reminder that there are things far more important than educational background. Oh my. As we're talking, I remember hearing numerous complaints about you. What? There have been several reports of you harassing people with only a high school diploma. Harassment, that's not it at all. I'm just teaching them the harsh realities of society. Teaching. So, what you did to Susan was also teaching, was it? Well, yes, that's exactly it. It's all done out of love. Mike tried to justify his indefensible logic. Michael looked at him with disdain and spoke calmly. I see. Then, let's conduct a thorough investigation and decide on an appropriate punishment. Punishment? Please wait. I just wanted to improve the quality of the organization. So, you consider improving quality important? Of course, I always put the organization first, beyond my own interests. That's a commendable thought. I agree with it. Thank you. Well then, I'll take my leave now. Yes. The senior management left. Mike seemed relieved that his viewpoint had received some agreement. However, a few days later, a shocking order came from the senior management for Mike. What? Me? Transferred? That's right. You're being sent. Wait a minute. Why do I have to be transferred? Are you dissatisfied? Of course I am. I want to elevate myself with my peers here at the headquarters. The place you're being transferred to is known for being very strict. That's terrible. You mentioned to the senior management that you prioritize the organization first, right? What does that have to do with anything? Michael agreed with you. Yes, but a transfer doesn't make sense at all. No, your transfer was decided because it was deemed necessary for someone who puts the organization first. What? You're a troublemaker who disrupts the harmony of the organization. We don't need that. That's harsh. How could I, a Harvard Law School graduate, be a troublemaker? That's impossible. You are free to think what you want. By the way, your transfer destination is famously strict, so brace yourself. What? Wait a minute. I was raised as a cherished only child. I can't handle a strict workplace. If it's too much, you're free to resign. Oh. The decision to transfer you is final. It won't be reversed. This is all Susan's fault. Don't blame others for your own failings. Shut up. I'll make you regret ever looking down on me. I'll climb higher than you could ever imagine. Is that so? Do your best. Don't mock me. I'll make all you low-educated people regret getting cocky. With those parting words, Mike was transferred. About 6 months later. John, have you heard about Mike? What happened? It seems he quit the FBI. What? After all his talk about making us regret it. He ran away because it was too tough. He had always had a smooth sailing career as a Harvard graduate, so he couldn't handle the sudden setback. Well, he couldn't turn his frustration into motivation. I wonder what he's doing now. I saw him at the park the other day. The park? Doing what? Susan happened to pass by the park in front of the station, where she saw Mike emerging from a makeshift home made of cardboard boxes. It seems their conversation went something like this. Mike, what are you doing here? It's you, Susan. Please, I'm begging you, give me some money. You must have some savings, right? Wait a minute. I can't just give you money like that. And, are you living in the park? I quit my job in frustration and gambled away all my savings on something I've never done before. What are you doing? Not only that, but I ended up borrowing money from some shady lenders and couldn't pay it back. So you ended up here. You know what? You feel sorry for me, right? Don't you really sorry for me? What? You don't want to see a Harvard graduate like me in such a fallen state, right? Well, I don't want to see it, but then you'll help me out, right? Give me $3,000. With that, I can definitely turn my life around. What? I'm a Harvard graduate, you know. With that amount of money, I can do anything, be it investing or gambling. The possibilities are endless. I refuse. What? I don't want to help someone who looked down on me and harassed me. How could you say something so cold? I just explained why. Excuse me. Wait, I am sorry about all of this. I think you're the best talent, even if you only graduated high school. Thanks for that, but it's not making me happy at all. Please, I'm begging you. You're my only hope. My parents have disowned me. I'm at my wit's end. You're being persistent. Goodbye. After that, Susan never encountered Mike again. I see. So he's living quite a miserable life now. After all the time he did to look down on me. And now you are a great asset to the workplace. Well, I wouldn't say so. You focused on using your computer knowledge to streamline your day-to-day work, right? Yes, I've always been interested in computers and studied them since I was a student. Thanks to your efforts, you are now assigned to the cyber division and are making a name for yourself. It's really awesome. Thank you. Actually, I used to be in the cyber division myself. Really? I had no idea. I was interested in computers just like you. With the rise in online crimes, I thought I could use my knowledge to help combat them. I never would have guessed you were in the cyber division. People are not what they seem. Hey now, what's that supposed to mean? Sorry, I just couldn't picture it. I used to hear that a lot when I was in the division. When Michael said you and I were alike at the Christmas party, he must have been referring to this. That's right. We also talked about computers, so he must have thought so. I'm glad I cleared that up. If you have any questions about the cyber division, feel free to ask me anything. If so, as a senior member of the cyber division, would you be willing to teach me some things? You're quick, aren't you? Sure, no problem. How about we go out for a meal this Saturday? I'd love to have a more detailed chat then. Let's do it. I know a great place we can go to. This became the start of Susan and me meeting up more frequently, even outside of work. Initially, we only talked about work, but gradually we began discussing our family lives and hobbies. Before we knew it, we weren't just having meals together, but also going out to various places. Sometimes, we even took Susan's child to amusement parks. About half a year into this relationship. Susan, would you consider dating me? What? The more we met outside of work, the more I found myself drawn to you. Thank you, but what? Are you sure you like me? Susan said this with a lack of confidence. Instead of words, I chose to respond by embracing her. John, I want you. Please, consider dating me with the intention of marriage. Yes, if you're sure you love me, I'd be happy too. And so, we began dating. Susan's child quickly grew fond of me, and I genuinely adored him. A person's academic background is undeniably a testament to their effort and achievement. However, a lower level of education does not equate to a lack of value in a person. Through these events, I was reminded of this simple truth. You're still not married. My beautiful wife is an executive secretary who has global experience. Not even out of high school. You wouldn't even get a chance to meet someone like her. After 30 years, my middle school classmate, now referred to as Mike, ridiculed me upon our reunion. He's probably still mentally stuck in the time when we graduated from middle school. Just then, I heard the soft honk of a car horn and turned my gaze towards the road. Parked there were 10 luxury cars, from which a line of well-built young employees began to emerge. Dressed in dark suits, the sight of these young men was quite impressive. These men with imposing figures built through physical labor, which were evident beneath their suits, all greeted me together. Mike, who had been watching, staggered back in fear before staring at me in astonishment. My name is James Carter. I'm 45 years old this year. I work for a construction company and live a happy life with my beloved wife and adorable daughter. Hearing just this, one might assume I've had a peaceful and gentle life. But in reality, it's been anything but peaceful, filled with poverty and frustration. I was raised in a terribly poor family. Soon after I was born, my father fell seriously ill and was hospitalized. Despite desperate treatments, he passed away just a year later. Left behind were my young mother, barely in her 20s, me at the tender age of 3, and the debt incurred from my father's medical bills. My mother had to raise me single-handedly, working from dawn till dusk every day. As a result, I never had the toys or games that other kids my age took for granted. We barely made ends meet by eating bread given to us by the bakery where my mother worked that could not serve it. When I started elementary school and began receiving school lunch, I was so amazed by the taste. Without those meals, I would have likely remained painfully thin without proper growth. It's hard to imagine in a country as wealthy and advanced as the United States that there are children living like I did. I didn't want to be at home where my mother didn't come home until late at night, and I spend more time outside the house. Even when I tried to play with others, I didn't have the latest games or anything really. Moreover, my worn and ragged clothes made me an outcast among my peers. That limited what I could do in parks and playgrounds, so I naturally holed myself up in the library to read books. Learning about worlds unknown to me was exhilarating, and my curiosity only grew, naturally drawing me to various subjects. Before I knew it, my grades improved significantly, and I began to earn the respect of my classmates. In middle school, I continued to excel academically, leading to roles like class rep and student body president, making for a fulfilling student life. However, this streak of success ended in the spring of my second year of middle school. A parent-teacher conference was held to determine a course of study at the high school, and I was present, but both my mother and my school counselor, Mr. Thompson, looked somber. With my academic ability back then, I could have easily gone on to the most advanced course at the top high school in the state. But even if we don't have to pay tuition, it costs a lot of money to go on to higher education. Mr. Thompson, isn't there any way? It's heartbreaking to think that his potential could be wasted just because we're poor, my mother said. No, it's okay, Mom. I've always wanted to start working as soon as possible, I lied. The truth was, I wanted to attend high school like my classmates, go to college, and gain a broad range of knowledge and experiences to contribute meaningfully to the world. But I also wanted to provide a more comfortable life for my mother, who had done so much for me. Considering this, I lied about my intentions to work immediately after middle school. However, my insistence didn't matter. My mother, nearly in tears, desperately wanted me to continue my education. Seeing my mother's determination for my future, Mr. Thompson presented a brochure. This local company, called the Anderson Group, actively accepts employees who have graduated from middle school. The company has a program that allows them to work while taking correspondence courses, so you could still get your high school diploma depending on your effort, James, he explained. Hearing Mr. Thompson's words, my mother pondered for a while. The construction industry seems physically and mentally demanding. Even with such a program, is it really possible to find time to study? She questioned. Indeed, it would require far more perseverance and effort than the average high school student, but I believe James has what it takes to succeed, Mr. Thompson reassured her. As my mother and Mr. Thompson discussed, I became fully convinced to work for this company after reading the brochure. It seemed like a place where both my desire to work and my mother's wish for me to study could be fulfilled. Above all, I was moved by the passionate corporate philosophy of the company's president, Mr. Anderson, which was detailed in the brochure. The company aimed to pursue happiness for all employees, both in their work and personal lives, while contributing to the advancement of the community and youth. Those words filled me with endless possibilities and enthusiasm, making me eager to join their ranks. Thanks to Mr. Thompson's support, I secured a job at Anderson Group. While all my classmates were heading to high school, I started feeling like an outsider at school. There was one person who seemed quite pleased with my situation. It was Mike, who had been my rival since elementary school. Mike came from a wealthy family and had been attending prestigious tutoring centers since he was young. Despite that, I often outperformed him in grades during our elementary school years, which apparently infuriated his mother. She unilaterally declared me his rival and constantly pushed him not to lose to me. However, my grades remained superior to Mike's throughout middle school, and I never relinquished the top spot in our class. At that time, I was still planning to pursue further education and had chosen the advanced course at one of the most competitive high schools in the state as my aspiration. While my mock test results were comfortably within the passing range, Mike's result was on the fence with a 50% chance of admission. After sneakily peeking at my results, a frustrated Mike bitterly remarked, "You can afford to go to the high school for 4 years, so how can you?" I couldn't muster a response to Mike's words. Yet, despite the bitterness and humiliation, I resolved to keep this incident to myself, not wanting to sadden my mother with it. From that moment, I began to seriously consider employment over further education. As everyone around me looked forward to high school, I resigned myself to the fact that such a future wasn't meant for me. When the placement period arrived, I took a chance and applied to an advanced course at a prestigious high school, securing the top score among applicants. After that, I changed my mind from higher education to finding a job. Thus, upon graduating middle school, I joined Anderson Group. Meanwhile, Mike seemed to have passed the course of his choice. But I was so busy adjusting to the completely new world of the construction industry that I didn't have time to think about anything else. Nowadays, female supervisors exist, but back then, the construction industry was dominated by men, and angry shouts were always heard here and there. In my new surroundings, it was Mr. Charles Anderson, the president of the Anderson Group, who took care of me as I was flustered and trying to adjust. Upon learning about my situation, Mr. Anderson, with tears in his eyes, vigorously patted my back in encouragement. "Young men like you, James, are the reason I run this company. Don't hesitate to ask for anything," he declared. True to his word, Mr. Anderson ensured I received on-the-job training while also making time for my studies. Consequently, I spent my mornings working on-site and my evenings studying at Mr. Anderson's home. Mr. Anderson had a lovely 3-year-old daughter. Her name is Sophia, who quickly grew fond of my frequent visits and would eagerly greet me at the door. "Sophia seems to have taken a real liking to you, James. Even when I'm around, she heads straight to you," Mr. Anderson would say, making me feel somewhat embarrassed. While gaining on-site experience, I also began to handle computer-based tasks such as calculations and designs. Apparently, I was better suited for the latter and gradually began to focus on administrative work. 4 years into my job, I graduated from a high school with a correspondence course. I had been contemplating continuing my work at the company when Mr. Anderson encouraged me to pursue higher education. "There's never a loss in acquiring education when you have the chance. Don't worry about the company. We'd be grateful to have you return with even more knowledge." Thus, I went on to study architecture at a prestigious university with the savings I'd made in salary. Sharing my acceptance news with my mother, she teared up with joy, saying, "You've worked so hard, balancing work and studies. You've really done well." Her happiness made me emotional too. At the university, I learned from renowned professors, made friends and acquaintances within the architectural field, and enjoyed fulfilling days. After graduating, I returned to Anderson Group, eventually taking on significant management roles in the company as I crossed into my 30s. My promotion was celebrated by my former senior colleagues at the company. Someone with hands-on site experience leading them significantly improved work efficiency. Thinking from both a managerial and an on-site perspective allowed us to make our operations safer and more efficient. As a result, Anderson Group's performance soared, and in recent years, the company has seen significant growth. My alma mater occasionally invited me to lecture on architecture, enhancing my local reputation and attracting a steady stream of young job applicants, contributing to the company's continued growth. Meanwhile, Mr. Anderson's daughter, Sophia, grew into a beautiful woman. Even I, typically slow to notice such things, noticed that Sophia seemed to have a genuine fondness for me. One day, Mr. Anderson invited me for a drink after work and abruptly asked, "So, James, have you got someone special in your heart?" "No, I'm enjoying my work right now and haven't really had the chance to meet any women." In response to my casual reply, Mr. Anderson looked at me seriously. "What do you think of Sophia? You already know. She really wants to marry you. I can trust you with my sweet daughter." Though I had sensed her affection, having it explicitly stated made me feel both embarrassed and elated. The next day, I dressed in my best suit and visited Mr. Anderson's home. With a bouquet of roses in hand, I declared to Sophia, "Sophia, I promise to make you happy. Please marry me." Nervously, I had intended to ask her out, but I ended up proposing instead. Nevertheless, Sophia blushed with happiness and said, "Yes, I'd be delighted to if you'll have me," and we were married a year later. Sophia took my last name, and we've been living a happy married life. 30 years after graduating from junior high and entering the workforce, I turned 45. It was a fitting milestone for me to become the second president of the company. Now, as my father-in-law, Mr. Anderson, taught me the ropes of being a president, my days became busier and more fulfilling than ever. Before I knew it, Anderson Group had grown into a regional powerhouse with 7,500 employees. Amidst this, the company was invited to play a central role in a major regional development project. With many related companies involved, a networking reception was organized in a hotel's grand hall to foster connections. On the day of the reception, the venue, set up as a buffet-style party, was bursting with the enthusiasm and ambition of those in the construction industry. This time, family attendance was encouraged, so the presence of construction company presidents' spouses and children added to the ambience. Sophia mentioned she would join later, so I waited for her arrival at the entrance, looking out onto the street. That's when a man stopped in front of me. His face seemed familiar, and as he approached and scrutinized me, he broke into a wide smile. "Hey, aren't you James? Long time no see. It's me, Mike." It was Mike, the one who had treated me as a rival back in middle school. "It's been a while. Surprised you recognized me." "I'm a sales director now. Beating my peers requires at least remembering names." Mike smirked, crossing his arms and staring at me. "I heard you became a carpenter. Are you involved in this project? You don't look sunburned, though." Got fired from carpentry. He probably assumed I was still working on site due to my initial job. It seemed Mike couldn't grasp that people's jobs and positions change over time. Wanting to feel superior by comparing himself to me, just like in middle school. Mike continued scrutinizing me, but then seemed to find a new angle to attack from. "Attending alone, aren't you? You're still not married. My beautiful wife is an executive secretary who has global experience. Not even out of high school. You wouldn't even get a chance to meet women." Reuniting after 30 years only to be mocked by Mike indicated his mindset hadn't evolved since middle school. While I understood his desire to boast about his wonderful wife and success, it wasn't appropriate for this setting. Mike went on boasting, but I was growing increasingly uncomfortable. Then, I heard a car horn and turned to look at the road. "James, I'm sorry to keep you waited." "Sophia, glad you could make it." In front of a lineup of 10 luxury cars, Sophia's arrival brought a smile to my face. "Thanks for coming today. Are the others in the cars behind your father and his colleagues?" "Yes, Dad wanted to give the younger members of the group a chance to learn too." As Sophia and I chatted amiably, well-built young employees began stepping out of the luxury cars. Dressed in dark suits, their presence was impressive. And their muscular builds, honed by physical labor, were apparent even through their suits as they greeted me. Witnessing this, Mike staggered back in shock, then looked incredulously between Sophia and me. "What? You're married, and to someone from the group?" "Yeah, she's my wonderful wife. Thanks to her, I'm leading a very happy life," I replied honestly, without feeling the need to hide anything. Our young and well-built employees gradually made their way into the hotel hall. At that moment, a woman dressed in a dark navy suit approached us. Mike greeted her with a relieved expression. "You're late." It seemed she was the wife Mike had boasted about, who has global experience. Being a secretary, she appeared in a simple outfit for today's event. "This is my wife, Madison. She is beautiful and works as an executive secretary. She used to live in Paris and Barcelona, so she speaks French and Spanish." Isn't that great?" Mike boasted as if her achievements were his own. After a brief glance at him, I greeted Madison. Though undoubtedly beautiful, her often forlorn expression caught my attention. Noticing me, Madison's demeanor shifted to a more formal one as she quickly greeted me. "Thank you for your support. I appreciate your consideration the other day." "It's no problem at all. It must have been tough for you since then." Overhearing our exchange, Mike looked at me quizzically. "Madison's an executive secretary at a trading company, right? Why are you, just a carpenter, speaking so familiarly with her?" "What are you talking about? This is Mr. Carter, the president of Anderson Group, a leading corporation in our state. He generously forgave our company for a delivery mishap recently," Madison corrected him. Indeed, Madison was the secretary to the director of one of Anderson Group's business partners. Not quite the high-level executive assistant Mike portrayed her. As faced with the truth, Mike stood agape, stunned. After all, Anderson Group was central to the current project. It was almost absurd that Mike, involved in a regional development plan, didn't recognize my name. However, unwilling to accept the reality, Mike shook his head in disbelief before raising his voice again. "Stop lying. I don't know how you deceived my Madison, but it's shameful to boast and lie even though you're poor." I was about to retort when Madison quickly apologized. "I'm sorry for my husband's rudeness. Despite the opportunity you gave us at work recently, we've caused you discomfort today." "It's fine. Work and personal life are separate, after all." Mike's expression darkened as our conversation continued. His pride was likely hurt, seeing his wife, whom he had boasted about, apologizing to me, whom he had looked down upon. What's this joke? There's no way a middle school graduate like you could be the president of the renowned Anderson Group. James is my husband, and there's no mistake that he's the president of Anderson Group. At that moment, Sophia, who had been listening in, spoke up. She began addressing Mike and Madison with a calm yet dignified smile. "James joined Anderson Group when I was just 3 years old. I've always known I wanted to be with him, and we got married as soon as I turned 18. What a lovely story. To be dedicated to your husband like that from such a young age, it must have been a fateful encounter." Flattered, I couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. "We were late today because I was putting our daughter to bed." "How old is your child?" Madison asked, her gaze drifting enviously towards Sophia's belly, which was noticeably rounded with our second child. "She's 3. We took our time to enjoy life as a couple before having her, so she's still quite young." Madison bit her lip in frustration as she listened to Sophia's innocent words. "I've always wanted children too, but with both of us working, and my husband's expensive car hobby, we can't afford it." "Don't blame it all on me. You spend plenty too. Look at James's wife. She may dress simply, but she's much more beautiful than you with all your finery," Mike retorted, pointing out Madison's branded accessories and bags. Though Madison was adorned in brand name items, her gaze lingered on Sophia's attire. Sophia, preferring elegant fashion, might seem understated at first glance, but she actually collected rare, high-value pieces she genuinely liked, likely making her attire more expensive. The realization that she had given up on children for financial reasons, only to be faced with someone who seemingly had it all, must have been painful for Madison. Moreover, while men can father children at an older age with lesser physical consequences, women face significant physical burdens, adding to Madison's distress. As I pondered their situation, Mike, looking displeased, grabbed my arm. "Look, running into you here must be fate. Let's do business with my company. I upset a major client last month. We're old acquaintances, right?" I was at a loss for words to Mike's utterly one-sided argument. Even after all these years, he still looked down on me until he knew I was the president, and then he suddenly changed his tune. "We worked hard studying together back in middle school, didn't we? Let's continue to get along." I wonder what Mike remembers from our middle school days. I still haven't forgotten his words. "You think you can just go to high school for 4 years without any money?" I'm not a philanthropist who's kind to just anyone, and to be honest, I'd rather not have Mike in my sight. "I'm sorry, but I have to decline. I don't think we can have a pleasant business relationship." "What? Why not?" Mike must not have expected to be turned down. His eyes widened in surprise, and he confronted me aggressively. "Come on, trade with me. My position at the company is really on the line here. My sales performance is down, and I'm not doing well with new ventures. At this rate, I might get demoted. I can help you there. Isn't that a reflection of your abilities? Who would willingly do business with someone whose performance is declining and is on the verge of demotion?" Not just Mike was taken aback by my words. Madison, who had been listening in, hastily pleaded, "Please let me also ask you. He could be fired, not just demoted. In fact, he has been messing around with a female subordinate and is being pursued by the company. He really can't afford to make any more mistakes." "Is that what you want, Madison?" When I asked her quietly, Madison could only respond with a surprised "what?" as her eyes widened. "I've talked with you a few times at work, so I feel I have some understanding of your character. In truth, you can forgive Mike for what he did, can you?" "Well..." Madison muttered a word and then fell silent, looking down. Madison's stern and silent expression is probably a far cry from her usual one. Seeing his wife motionless, Mike panicked and pressed her. "What do you mean? You're my wife. You should always be on my side, right?" Leaving Mike to his ranting, I prompted Sophia to move into the grand hall with me. The reception ended successfully that day, but we never saw Mike or Madison again. That was the last time I saw Mike. What follows is what I heard from acquaintances at our trading partners. Following that reception, the large-scale development project for regional promotion progressed smoothly with various companies. But Mike's company was not among them. The lack of an attractive proposal was the main reason. However, it's rumored that Mike's bad behavior, which had become widely known, was also a factor in their reluctance to engage in business. Considering the effect on the company's future, the executives decided to transfer Mike from sales. He was moved to a less significant department, essentially being put on standby for voluntary resignation. It seems pitiful to hear that much, but in fact, it seems that the situation was one of leniency, that he was not reprimanded. This is because it was discovered that Mike was actually demanding bribes from his subcontractors. When his salary didn't increase as expected due to declining performance, he started selling company client lists to dubious firms in exchange for cash and lavish entertainment. As these facts came to light, and female employees he had harassed began to consider legal action, Mike finally surrendered. Taking responsibility for his actions, he resigned voluntarily. He tried to find work in other companies, but his reputation had already spread throughout the industry, leading to rejections everywhere. Having no choice, he managed to get hired as a temporary worker by a subcontractor, but his pride in having always been on a winning side in his life up to that point did not leave him until the end. It led to his resignation after failing to tolerate being instructed by younger supervisors. He then drifted through various part-time jobs, barely making ends meet. Meanwhile, Madison, having grown tired of Mike, decided to divorce him early on, and threw herself into her work with renewed vigor. Though they were not blessed with children, she paid a visit to a child welfare facility with a friend. It led her to volunteer and engage in support activities for children. Helping as many children as possible find their desired paths in life made her feel her life had meaning. "I'm truly grateful to you, Mr. Carter," You taught me that there's more to life than just marriage to Mike and gave me the opportunity to change my life." Madison said when we met again after a long time, she had stopped her flashy dressing and opted for a simple, elegant style instead. It seems that men with sincere intentions are also drawn to her. Given her diligence and capability, she can undoubtedly carve out a fulfilling life for herself from here on. As for us, Sophia safely gave birth to our second child, a son, thereafter. As a family of 4, we cherish each other and live happily every day. Having experienced poverty in my childhood, I'm determined not to let my children go through the same hardships. Therefore, I'm even more devoted to my work than ever, striving daily to stabilize the company. If I ever seem to be heading in a dangerous direction, I'm sure Sophia, always by my side, will caution me. For the sake of my family and employees, I'm committed to managing Anderson Group with care. The regional development project has progressed smoothly, and now there's a large park in front of the station. As I watch my children play in the park, Sophia and I contemplate the future of our town together. The future of our children represents the future of our country. I want to do everything within our power to pass on a better world to our children. Watching our kids run around energetically, I once again reflect on our hopes for the future.
My name is David. I was born in Boston and grew up in a normal family as a regular high school student. That said, my appearance might not be considered normal. I was already 5 feet 7 inches when I was in elementary school and over 6 feet 3 inches in high school. However, I didn't have a slim model-like physique. I had a heavy, muscular build, weighing almost 220 pounds, with a beard so tough it could beat a razor. So, I've never been seen as my age, and I've been recruited for martial arts clubs and rugby teams many times. But despite my appearance, I'm more of an indoor and introverted person. I liked playing around with computers and even did some programming. So in high school, I joined the computer club, not a sports team, spending my days typing on the keyboard with my bear-like hairy fingers. While it was rare to have a bear in the computer club, there was another unusual member. It was my classmate Rachel, who, to put it mildly, was stunningly beautiful. Walking through town, she would make all the men turn on her, and in the city, she'd get business cards from a number of scouts. And strangely enough, Rachel was my girlfriend. Now, I don't even remember how we met. We just liked each other, that was the start. You might wonder why a beauty like her would date a bear-like guy like me. Honestly, I wonder too. People called us Beauty and the Beast, but our love grew steadily. However, after more than 2 years of dating, our relationship changed significantly. Hey, we'll have to decide which college to go soon. What are you planning, David? Well, I want to be an engineer, so I'll probably go to a college where I can work more with computers. What about you, Rachel? Actually, I'm going to a college in a foreign country. My dad thinks it's best for my future. I was shocked. I couldn't process it all at once. Abroad. Why? Well, I haven't told you this yet, but my dad is the CEO of a company. The company she mentioned was one I'd seen on TV commercials. In short, I'm the company's CEO's daughter. He thinks studying abroad will broaden my perspective for when I eventually get involved in the business. But I want to stay with you, David. I see. But, well, yeah, that's something. What do you want me to do, David? Of course, I want us to stay together. Really? Then help me convince my dad. I want to be with you too. Well, that's a bit. Why not? Because, well, he's a famous CEO, right? I'm not sure my words would be convincing enough. But you just said you wanted to be together. I do want to be together. But, you know, your dad has his own thoughts too. When I looked at Rachel, she had tears welling up in her big eyes. They looked like they would fall any moment. After a moment of silence, Rachel spoke. I hate you, David. I hate you so much. She ran off. I wanted to chase after her, but I couldn't take that step. As a high school student, I didn't feel capable of changing an adult's mind. No, that's not right. I gave up before even trying. I lacked the courage. From that day, a distance grew between us. We stopped seeing each other and lost contact. Before I knew it, we graduated, and Rachel went abroad. There were plenty of opportunities. Rachel is the most precious one to me. Yes, all I had to do was to say that to her. But I couldn't do it. Since then, there's been a huge hole in my heart, and nothing I did could fill that void. I spent my days filled with regret. I graduated from college without much direction, started working at a company without much purpose, and kept working aimlessly. Before I knew it, nearly 10 years had passed since I joined the company. Despite my thick fingers, I managed my work competently and even took on mentoring younger colleagues. However, the more I worked, the more uncomfortable I felt at the company. It was all because of my boss, Steve, who became my direct supervisor along the way. Steve was not particularly capable but seemed to have a cozy relationship with HR, allowing him to hold a position beyond his abilities. Unable to see himself objectively, he treated his subordinates terribly. Among them, I often became the target, perhaps because of my noticeable appearance. I was constantly berated for unreasonable things, blamed for the mistakes of juniors and superiors alike, and criticized at every turn. I often thought about quitting a job with such a boss. How many times had I considered it? But I never had the courage to take that step. I lacked the resolve to change my situation. So, I continued to work, feeling drained and unmotivated. However, one day, something happened that was simply unacceptable. During a business negotiation with a client in Boston, Steve made a crucial mistake. And then, he blamed everything on me. The mistake was simple: he sent the wrong data to the client, causing significant errors in their system. I had definitely debugged the data and handed it to Steve. Yet, during the multiple exchanges, he must have lost track. Steve ended up sending the old data. It was clear from the properties and update timestamps of the sent data. Yet, when I pointed this out to Steve, he wouldn't listen to me at all. Instead, he blamed me for not managing the data properly. At this point, nothing I said would be heard. My colleagues sympathized but kept silent, fearing the fallout would reach them. Anyway, this is your mistake. What are you going to do about it? Our relationship with this client could be ruined. Go apologize to them right now. Right now? To Boston? What, do you have a problem with that? You're always like this, always dissatisfied. I understand, I'm sorry. I'll head there immediately. So, I packed my things and boarded a train to Boston. I never thought I'd return home in such a way. I hadn't visited my family in a long time. Feeling despondent, I honestly doubted my ability to continue at this company. I was sure I had acquired enough skills as an engineer. I would seriously need to consider finding a new job. As I gazed out the window, lost in thought, the sky was overcast, hinting at snow. I arrived at the station, took a taxi, and headed to the client's office. After explaining the situation at the reception, I waited nervously for the client. At first, the two representatives approached me with extreme anger. But after I apologized profusely and handed over the correct data, they finally calmed down. When they learned I was from Boston, we chatted about our hometowns, and by evening, we had bonded, with them even saying, "Please come again." I felt a sense of accomplishment, but it was quickly shattered when I called Steve from the taxi on my way back. "What were you doing until this time?" "Well, I was talking with the client, and time just flew by." "It took you too long. You're really bad at negotiations, aren't you? You weren't just out drinking somewhere, were you?" I didn't even feel like explaining anymore, so I was just listening without saying anything back. Steve then told me to return to the office. He wanted me to summarize the details of the negotiation and apology on the train ride back. Filled with an indescribable sense of emptiness, I closed my eyes until I arrived at the station. But unfortunately, I arrived at the station quickly. Though it was my hometown, I didn't have time to visit my family or enjoy the local food and drink. I had to return to New York to report today's events and outcomes. All because of that detestable Steve. I felt a mix of exhaustion, hunger, and frustration, and tears welled up in my eyes. This was unacceptable. I was back in my hometown after a long time. I thought I should do something, so I headed into the station. It was past 6 p.m., and the train would arrive in about 30 minutes. I decided to quickly grab some sushi, but it didn't go so well. The sushi and izakaya places in the station were all crowded with people lining up outside. I didn't have enough time to wait in line. So, I tried to pick out a good bento box to satisfy myself even a little. Considering I had to return to work, drinking on the train was out of the question. Feeling a bit down, I ended up buying crab sushi and a bottle of green tea, as I did every time I came back home. With a heavy heart, I paid for my meal and checked my watch, seeing that there was still time before the train arrived. That said, I didn't have anything else I wanted to do. Actually, staying in the station with all its temptations was uncomfortable, so I decided to head to the platform early. When I got to the platform, it was still early, and there were hardly any people. I trudged to a bench to rest my tired body, and at the far end of the platform, a couple was making a lot of noise. I figured they were probably drunk and having fun, and I opened my laptop to start writing the report. Just then, I heard a woman's high-pitched voice. "Stop. Don't touch me. Let me go." Curious about the commotion, I turned to look and saw that it was a woman who had shouted. On closer inspection, it was clear they weren't a couple. The woman was dressed in an elegant, high-end coat, while the man was an older guy with thinning hair. Even from a distance, it was obvious the man was drunk, and the woman was clearly uncomfortable. I quickly put my laptop back in my bag and headed towards them. "Stay away. I'll call the police." "Hey, what's going on here?" "Huh? Who are you?" The man turned around, visibly startled. It made sense. A 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighing 220 pounds man standing there would be intimidating. But the man, drunk as he was, didn't back down. "Who are you?" "Are you her friend?" "Well, not exactly." "Wait, Rachel?" I was more surprised than the old man. The woman being harassed was Rachel. I hadn't seen her since high school, over 10 years ago. But I recognized her immediately. Sure, she wore makeup and had changed a lot since then. But her distinctive nose, soft lips, and determined eyes were unmistakable. "Is that you, David?" Rachel recognized me too. Given my unique appearance, it was hard not to. "Why are you here?" As we were struck speechless by this unexpected reunion, the older man interrupted with a rough voice. "So, you two know each other?" "Well, tell her this for me. She was sitting next to me on the train and kept giving me looks. When we got off at the same station, I tried to talk to her, but she suddenly started acting like she didn't want to. So, tell her to listen to the elders." "What are you talking about?" "I never gave you any looks." "Liar. Every time you went to the bathroom, you lifted your skirt right in front of me, showing off those nice legs. You were clearly inviting me. Just admit it." "Excuse me? I was just going to the bathroom, and you were sitting on the aisle seat. What else was I supposed to do?" From their conversation, it seemed they had sat next to each other on the train. Every time Rachel, sitting by the window, got up, she had to pass by the man sitting on the aisle. Usually, the man might not have behaved this way, but he seemed quite drunk. The fact that they got off at the same station might have given him a sense of entitlement, leading to his behavior. However, knowing Rachel, she wouldn't give a man like this any attention, especially not a disheveled, overweight older man. As I thought about this, the man turned back towards me. "So, what are you gonna do? If you're her friend, tell her. If not, then get lost." In the past, I might have been intimidated by such an aggressive tone. But not this time. "Excuse me, sir. I am actually quite close to this woman. I apologize for the misunderstanding, but we were supposed to meet here. I don't know what happened on the train, but Rachel is not the type to flirt with men." "I'm sure it's a misunderstanding." "Huh? What are you talking about?" "Look at her, wearing that mini skirt, clearly inviting me." "No, she isn't that kind of person. I'm sure she wore that skirt because she was meeting me. So, please leave. If you continue to insult her, I won't stand by. Let's settle this peacefully. The stairs are that way." I pointed my thick, bony finger toward the stairs. The man was more intimidated by my appearance than my words. He clicked his tongue and walked away towards the stairs. As he left, the announcement for the next train to New York was made. Thank you for backing me up. But why are you here, David? I was here for a business meeting. Oh, not visiting your family? No, I was too busy. I didn't have time to visit home. But why are you here, Rachel? My parents insisted I visit them. Work had slowed down, so I finally came back. The train pulled into the station, and passengers began to disembark. So, you're heading back to New York now? Yeah, I need to report on today's meeting. I see. It's been so long since we last met. Do you really have to go back today? You helped me out, and there's so much to catch up. If you can, I'd love to grab dinner together. Rachel looked up at me with her eyebrows knit in a pleading gaze. That look had always made my heart race when we were dating, and seeing it again after so long was incredibly powerful. Well, I suppose. Come on. Your company is in the city, right? It'll be late by the time you get back anyway. Why not stay a bit and catch the last train? My resolve crumbled easily. There were many reasons. I was dissatisfied with my current job. Why should I go the extra mile for Steve, the source of my frustration? And the invitation for food was tempting, given how hungry I was. Also, as she asked, there was no urgent need to report back tonight. I had already informed Steve by phone, and he wouldn't see my written report until the next day. So, there was no reason to rush back. But most importantly, Rachel was here. That was everything. Back then, I didn't have the courage to move forward. I have regretted that decision ever since. I had decided that if I ever saw Rachel again, I would act with all my courage. So, I watched the train doors close, turned off my phone, and got into a taxi with Rachel. We headed to a local restaurant she recommended that served delicious fish and sake. Drinking with Rachel was a truly delightful, dreamlike experience. Rachel now worked at the New York branch of her father's company, holding a somewhat high position, and her daily life was quite demanding. I shared my frustrations about work, and Rachel laughed, saying, "You really have terrible bosses." Her slightly flushed cheeks, glistening eyes, and glossy lips were all so beautiful. I had thought she was beautiful in high school, but her radiance had rather even increased. "So, David, are you married?" "I don't see a ring." "Married? No way. I don't even have a girlfriend. I'm too busy with work, and I look like a bear." "Oh, don't say that. You have an ex-girlfriend who was right here." "Yeah, but that was a mistake of your life, wasn't it? Thanks for giving a bear like me a dream back then." "Stop it, really. Back then, I truly loved you, and I don't think of it as a mistake. If anything, I've always." "What? Do you still like me or something?" Grinning to hide my embarrassment and self-doubt, I joked with Rachel. Of course, there's no way a beautiful CEO's daughter like her would still have feelings for me. I was sure she must have moved on with some handsome, wealthy guy by now, or so I thought. "Yes. I've always liked you, ever since then." Rachel's face and even her ears turned bright red, but she still looked straight at me as she said it. "Wait, seriously? You're joking, right?" "I'm not. I've always thought about you since we broke up. I've tried dating other people, but every time, I realized I still liked you." "But, you said you hated me." "No, I said I hated the cowardly David who wouldn't stand up for himself. I wanted you to laugh and say, 'I'll convince your father no matter what.' I wanted you to confidently say, 'I'm the only one who can make Rachel happy.' But you didn't." Rachel was right. Since that day, I had often fallen into self-loathing. Why couldn't I muster the courage? Why couldn't I take that step? Every night, I pondered these questions, but I never acted. "I see. I didn't notice it. I'm sorry. No, I couldn't be honest either. We were probably both just too young." Rachel smiled as she said that. "That's right. Back then, I was immature. I was a foolish kid who didn't understand what truly mattered. But now, things are different. You're right. But now, I think I've grown up a bit. I know what's truly important." "Rachel, I love you. I know I'm just a bear. And you're like a princess, but I don't want to lie to my heart anymore. Rachel, I love you. If it's for you, I can face your father and do anything to make you happy. So, will you spend your life with me? Rachel froze when she heard my words. Then, with tears streaming from her big eyes, she simply said, yes. After more than 10 years, we were reunited. I don't remember much of what happened after that. We spent a wonderful time together, and I ended up staying at a hotel in my hometown. I told Rachel I would formally meet her father later, and we both left. Feeling like I was in a dream, I crawled into bed at the hotel and realized my phone had been off. When I turned it on, there were dozens of missed calls from my company. I messed up. That's what I thought for a moment. But if I had prioritized work and taken that train, I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. Honestly, if this incident led to more unreasonable treatment at work, I wouldn't miss that company. I'd quit without hesitation. I showered and fell asleep, thinking of Rachel's face. The next morning, I woke up to a message from an unknown number. It was from Rachel. You were amazing yesterday, David. Not just for saving me from that drunk, but for making the right decisions for my sake. You were really cool. Today might be tough at work, but I'll always support you. Take care. I grinned to myself and reread the message again and again. However, I had a challenge ahead of me. Steeling myself, I put on my suit, got into a taxi, and headed for the train to New York. During the ride, I felt an indescribable energy welling up inside me. By the time I summarized the previous day's meeting on the train, I had already arrived in Brooklyn. I transferred trains, passed through the company's entrance, and returned to my office. As I had informed them of my arrival time, Steve and my HR manager, John, were waiting for me. Before I could even put down my bag, they led me to a small conference room. Why didn't you answer the calls yesterday? What's the status of the meeting? As I mentioned on the call yesterday, the meeting went well, so there's no need to worry. I didn't return the calls because I was feeling unwell and ended up staying overnight. I had already informed you that the meeting was successful. So I didn't think it was critical. It's not your place to decide that. Do you even understand your situation? My situation. Yes, Steve mentioned that you messed up an important meeting. No, I didn't. If anything, it was rather Steve's mistake. I don't want to hear excuses. According to Steve, your usual work performance has been subpar. Defying your superiors and creating a negative atmosphere. What? Who said that? Behind John, I saw Steve smirking. I realized that John had already been influenced by Steve, making it pointless to argue further. Seeing this, I decided that I no longer cared about this company. Therefore, we are considering transferring you to our branch in Kentucky. Are you saying I'm being demoted? Come on, don't put it that way. Kentucky has a lot of nice things. It might be a long stay, but you don't have a family, so enjoy it. Steve said this sarcastically, putting a hand on my shoulder. At this point, I knew I didn't need to stay with this company any longer. Fine. Instead of a demotion, I'd rather quit. Consider this my resignation effective this month. Hearing this, Steve and John exchanged pleased looks. If that's your decision, we can't stop you. Losing someone of your talent is unfortunate for us, but if that's what you want, you need to find a new job, so you don't need to come in tomorrow. Pack your things today and prepare for your future. Strangely, I felt no anger or regret. Instead, I was filled with a sense of liberation and excitement for new opportunities. I quickly said my goodbyes to my colleagues, packed my belongings, and left the company. I had no regrets. The only thing I pondered was what to do next. The first thing I did was call Rachel. She said she was still at her parents' house, so I figured it wouldn't be a bother. Hey, David. Why are you calling in the middle of the day? Well, I just got back from the office. Long story short, they tried to demote me, so I decided to quit. No way. That's actually great news. Hey, I'm feeling a bit down here. Isn't that a bit harsh? Oh, sorry. That came out wrong. I actually told my dad about you. Wait, already? There's no problem though. But what did he say? I've been telling my dad about my past relationships, and he's actually been worried about me. Worried? About what? I'm not exactly young anymore, you know? My dad wants to see his grandchildren, but I was still hung up on my past relationships. So, when he heard that we started dating again, he was surprisingly happy. That's a relief. But how does my quitting make things better? Well, I mentioned that you're an engineer. It turns out my dad's company is expanding and needs experienced people. I think you're perfect for the job. Don't you agree? Yeah, I've been focused on my work all these years. I think I can handle it, but are you sure? Come on, the David I know wouldn't doubt himself like that. I could sense Rachel's smile through the phone. You're right. I can do this. As your boyfriend and an engineer, I'll meet your dad's expectations. I'm so happy to hear that. Can you come back to Boston soon? My dad wants to meet you. And so, I found myself boarding the train back to Boston the next day. Though the scenery outside the train window was the same as yesterday, it looked completely different to me. When I arrived at the designated station, Rachel and her father were waiting for me. I felt a bit intimidated by her father's stern look, but I began to walk towards them. It was a strong yet careful step, leading to a brighter future. I'd been working diligently for 20 years. One day, out of the blue, I received a notice of termination despite my dedication to the company. Congratulations, Mark. You've been selected for workforce reduction. We've hired a top-notch new recruit, so you're being let go. Thanks for your hard work. I stood speechless at the sudden declaration from my manager, Evan. It's unfortunate, but that's reality. You should regret your foolishness for opposing me. That's good. What? He was taken aback by my response and stopped speaking. But soon he regained his composure and flashed that nasty, smug grin. No matter how tough you talk, you're still fired. Pack your things and leave. He walked away laughing loudly, but he truly understood the meaning of my words the next day. My name is Mark Davis. I've been working at Carson Manufacturing, which makes industrial machinery, for 20 years. Before I knew it, I had become 43 years old, focusing solely on my work and working tirelessly. Even though I've been around for a long time, I'm still a regular employee without any position. That's because I love tinkering with machines more than anything and wanted to stay on the production floor forever. There were several opportunities for promotion, but I always explained my situation and had the promotion deferred. For me, having the environment to freely create machines was more important than the salary. However, such happy days came to an abrupt end yesterday. Despite my 20 years of dedicated service, I was suddenly given a termination notice yesterday. Looking back, Evan becoming my supervisor was the direct cause. All my previous supervisors were hardworking and respectable mentors. They would cover for my mistakes and collaborate with other departments to solve problems when consulted. Such a culture allowed Carson Manufacturing to gain a certain level of trust in the industry, despite being a small company. But that changed when the CEO was replaced, and his nephew Evan was transferred here. I won't tolerate the lax atmosphere of this workplace. From now on, every employee must give their all to achieve results. Evan declared this abruptly in his first address. At first, we employees were confused but tried to accept his demands. Needless to say, everyone at the factory has been passionate about machine manufacturing. Without being told, we were already trying our best to get the job done. But Evan, without understanding the situation on the ground, kept demanding higher sales. Without any concrete instructions, we were constantly reprimanded, and I finally decided to speak directly to him. Evan, everyone is doing their best every day. But if you ask us to improve our performance without specific directions, we don't understand how. If you guys working on the ground don't understand, how should I know? Mr. Carson boasted that you are excellent employees. If you're so talented, you should be able to figure it out without my instructions. No matter how hard I tried to communicate, he was always like this, making conversation impossible. Through persistent discussions, I realized that he was completely inexperienced. It seems Mr. Carson called his nephew, who had been drifting from job to job in various industries, to give him a position out of pity. I gave up on expecting concrete instructions from Evan. But he held a grudge against me for embarrassing him in that meeting and resented me persistently afterward. I heard you're in your 40s, Mark. In other companies, you'd be considered a mid-level employee. Why are you still a regular employee here? I enjoy working on the production floor and wish to continue here until the end. No need for such excuses. In other words, you're incompetent. We don't need incompetent employees here, but do your best to work hard. Whenever we crossed paths, he would make sarcastic remarks and complain. Gradually, his sarcasm wasn't just directed at me but also at Emily, my right-hand woman. She is a younger woman in her 30s with exceptional skills and a great sense for the work. That's why I always included her in my product development, but Evan mocked her for it. This company has generous benefits. Mark even has a babysitter assigned to him. Seeing him compare me and Emily while laughing, I almost retorted. I could ignore insults directed at me, but involving other employees was different. However, it was Emily herself who held me back. I know how capable you are. No matter what anyone says, we just need to prove ourselves through our work. Her smile, which always cheered up everyone around, also helped ease my tension. This is how we managed to continue our daily work despite the troublesome presence of Evan. However, over time, his behavior became even more unbearable. It became a norm for him to leave work on time while pushing his tasks onto his subordinates. Although we employees covered his work, he never showed any gratitude or appreciation. Moreover, when employees applied for paid leave, he would reject it with unreasonable excuses like being too busy or coinciding with his own leave. Realizing that this was unsustainable, we decided to directly complain to Mr. Carson about him. We believed that only he, being a relative, could change Evan's attitude. But the result was a complete failure. Instead of reprimanding Evan, I was the one who got scolded. You've been with this company for 20 years, haven't you? It's your role to support Evan, yet you complain without making any effort. From now on, devote yourself more to assisting him. Hearing this directly from the CEO made me utterly disillusioned with the company. Since then, Evan has been subjecting me to various petty harassments. I've been working on developing a machine that assembles parts for about 5 years. I named it Fabs, combining fabrication and fabulous, to represent the joy of creation. Fabs was designed to handle large and heavy parts accurately, automating a wide range of assembly tasks. Once completed, it would replace manual insertion processes, significantly reducing work time and stabilizing quality. For the past year, we focused on finalizing the product based on the prototype, but one day, the prototype was found destroyed. When I arrived at work that day, I was shocked to see the prototype forcibly toppled and in pieces. The prototype was quite large and was securely fixed to prevent it from being easily knocked over. But now, it appeared as if it had taken a severe hit, with one side severely dented. As I stood there in shock, Evan approached, pretending to be passing by, and sneered at me. "Oh, is that the toy you were making, Mark?" "Sorry, I bumped into it, and it fell over." "But isn't it good that we found out its weakness before it was commercialized?" "You should be thanking me." Lying through his teeth, he walked away laughing loudly. There's no way it would fall just from a bump. It was designed to withstand repeated shaking. Even though I knew it was his doing, without any proof of his deliberate act, I couldn't report it anywhere. Swallowing my frustration, I began repairing the prototype. Fortunately, most of the internal circuitry was intact, and within a few days, the prototype was restored. Since then, I made sure to lock the room where the prototype was kept whenever I left. Previously, the development room was always open so that anyone in the company could freely observe it. The low barriers for exchanging opinions across positions and departments were a strong point of this company, but from that day, such enjoyment became a thing of the past. Besides this incident, Evan continued to harass me by shredding documents I created and piling an excessive amount of paperwork solely on me. Additionally, he would answer calls intended for me and delete data I was responsible for without permission, taking his harassment to new levels. Despite this, I stayed at the company. This was because I had a strong resolve not to leave until Fabs was officially launched. I believed that once Fabs was released, it could bring about a small revolution in the manufacturing industry, which was suffering from a labor shortage. Holding on to this belief, I endured Evan's daily provocations and immersed myself in product development. In the midst of these trying days, a turning point finally arrived. One day, an envelope was delivered to my desk. It was an invitation to the world's largest technology and manufacturing exhibition. This exhibition was a platform to showcase the latest manufacturing and implementation technologies in electronics, attracting related industries from both domestic and international companies, such as electronics, semiconductors, and automotive parts manufacturers. I had applied to present fabs, which I had been developing for 5 years, at this event. Now everyone will see how amazing fabs is. I prepared day and night for the exhibition, fine-tuning fabs and getting ready for the presentation. On the day of the exhibition, the venue was filled with industry experts and media representatives. Finally, it was time to present fabs. As the presentation time approached, I felt a thrilling excitement like never before. But just 5 minutes before the start, I was suddenly called out by the event organizers. "Mark, we're sorry, but Evan will be presenting instead of you." "What? Evan?" I was bewildered, but while I was trying to process this, Evan walked past me with my presentation materials and took the stage. He then began presenting the content I was supposed to present, with a self-satisfied look on his face. "What is going on? I prepared everything. The demo files for fabs, the PR videos, everything was made by me." Next to me, Emily was also trembling at the sight before us. "This is terrible. I can't believe it. He has stolen all of your work, Mark. Fabs is my creation. I built it from scratch and finally brought it to completion." After the presentation, Evan, completely satisfied, approached us as we stood there in shock. "Evan, what is the meaning of this? What's the problem?" "It's obvious. It's better for a department head like me to explain than a regular employee like you. Don't you understand that it increases the chances of successful deals?" he retorted, showing no remorse whatsoever. Unable to hold back, I finally let go of my usual resignation and protested. "But fabs is my invention. You don't even understand the content of the materials you just read, do you? The employee who understands the product should be the one presenting. You just don't get it, do you? Besides, I got permission from Mr. Carson to present this machine. Are you going to go against his decision?" Seeing the smug look on his face, I realized that arguing further was pointless. He must have been waiting for an opportunity to embarrass me for a long time. When I reacted to him destroying the prototype, he probably figured out that fabs was the most important thing to me. He had undoubtedly arranged everything in advance with Mr. Carson to take fabs away from me. But being told it was the CEO's decision, there was nothing more a regular employee like me could do. As I stood there swallowing my frustration, Evan patted me on the shoulder and walked away with a gleeful look. "Well, since there's nothing more to discuss, I'll take my leave. I have to handle the inquiries and orders for that machine." As expected, fabs was welcomed with open arms by the industry. Evan had stolen my product and, as a result, gained significant recognition and fame in the industry. Seeing Evan and Mr. Carson reveling in their success, I finally made up my mind. The most shocking news came the day after the exhibition, today. Remembering the humiliating events of the previous day, I went to work as usual. However, my desk was completely empty. All the research I had accumulated over the years and the meticulously gathered documents were gone. What is going on here? I don't know. I have no idea. When I came in this morning, it was already like this. I asked Emily and my other colleagues, but everyone just shook their heads, clueless. After searching the department, we found that everything from my desk had been stuffed into garbage bags and left in a storage room. Who would do something like this? Emily muttered in shock, and everyone thought of the same person. At that moment, "Mark, what are you doing over there?" "Evan." Grinning smugly, Evan appeared, clearly in high spirits. He glanced at me holding the garbage bags and snorted derisively. "Rummaging through trash early in the morning? You've really hit rock bottom, haven't you? My belongings were thrown away. Do you know anything about it, Evan?" "Oh, that? It was all unnecessary, so I took care of it last night." "You should be thanking me." "What?" He casually admitted it was his doing, leaving me speechless. As I struggled to find a response, he smiled and dropped a bombshell. Congratulations, Mark. You've been selected for workforce reduction. We're hiring a top-tier new graduate starting tomorrow, so you're fired. I was stunned by the sudden announcement. He continued, enjoying himself. The new hire is Mr. Carson's son. He's a young, college-educated employee, totally different from an eternal regular employee like you. The machine you made, fabs or whatever, is finished, right? That means you're no longer needed by the company. The new hire will use your desk starting tomorrow, so clear it out and leave today. In other words, you're fired. I've worked diligently for 20 years. And now you're telling me to leave by the end of today? His grin widened even more at my response. That's what I've been saying. A regular employee can't even understand when they're being fired. Listen, Mark, you're fired. It's unfortunate. But that's reality. You should regret the foolishness of opposing me. That's good. What? He was taken aback and stopped talking. What did you just say? I said that's good. Evan, can't you understand my response? This company may be what it is now, but I've been here for 20 years. I was hesitant to submit my resignation, but since you fired me for the company's convenience, it's a different story. Now I can leave this company proudly. Hearing my words, Evan stood there, dumbfounded for a moment. But soon he shook his head, regaining his composure, and that nasty, smug grin returned to his face. Is this the howl of a loser? No matter how much you pretend to be tough, you're still fired. Pack your things and leave. I will. And by the way, I'll be taking all the unpaid vacation days I've accrued. For a lowly employee, you sure know how to use your head. Take as many days off as you want. With that, he laughed loudly and walked away. I gathered my necessary belongings and left the company. After 20 years of commuting every day, rain or shine, it ended rather abruptly. Thinking about this, I slept in late the next day, forgetting all my past fatigue. But when I woke up and saw my phone screen by my pillow, I blinked in surprise. What is with all these missed calls? There were dozens of missed calls from the workplace I had just left. They must have been calling non-stop since the start of the workday. As I sighed at the long list of missed calls, another call came in. I was tempted to ignore it, but the constant ringing was draining the battery, and it was annoying. I realized that if the calls continued like this, I wouldn't be able to use my phone properly. So, reluctantly, I decided to answer. Hello, this is Mark. Finally. How long were you going to keep me waiting? The workplace is in chaos. Get here immediately. The person yelling was, of course, Evan. Without waiting for my response, he started babbling about the situation. According to him, when he arrived at work this morning, there were no employees present. When no one showed up at the start of the workday, he began calling each employee, only to find out that everyone had resigned. Shocked, he visited the CEO's office, but found only a pale-faced Mr. Carson, with his secretary nowhere to be found. After you left yesterday, all the employees came to submit their resignations. They all said they would leave in a month and use their remaining vacation days during that month. I thought it was a joke and ignored it. But no one showed up today. I only fired Mark. Why did the other employees resign too? Evan was at a loss, and Mr. Carson had no answers either. Gradually, Evan's face turned red with panic. This means there's no one to do the handover. The company is in serious trouble. I told them the same thing, but they insisted it was according to the rules and no one would come back. Did they really have that many vacation days left? And taking a month's worth of vacation is incredibly unprofessional. His rant continued, and then he started berating me over the phone. You mentioned taking your vacation days yesterday, right? This company's employees have no sense. Taking vacation days when you're fired. And for a whole month, no less. This is fraud. There's nothing unusual about it. I was completely exasperated and explained the vacation policy to him. In this company, employees earn 20 days of paid leave each year. Additionally, for this particular year, they can carry over and use days to the next year. Thus, employees could accumulate up to 40 days of paid leave if they choose to. Ever since you came, you've been denying our vacation requests for various reasons. So everyone carried over their unused vacation days. This is just karma for what you've done to us. No way. His weak voice was clear even over the phone. But then he snapped back to reality and raised his voice again. All right, I'll give up on the other employees. But you must convince Emily, who worked with you, to stay. What? Why just her? She knows all the ins and outs of your complicated work. After firing you, I planned to have her take over your tasks. But now she's left too. My plan is ruined. That's unfortunate. I suppressed the urge to laugh. Actually, after leaving the company yesterday, I met up with Emily. I submitted my resignation to Mr. Carson as well. She said, smiling brightly as she followed me out. Are you sure about this? Absolutely. A company that makes such poor decisions isn't worth staying at. When I told him I was resigning, he mocked me, saying they wouldn't miss 1 or 2 employees like me. She started laughing heartily. Mr. Carson and Evan are going to be in for a shock tomorrow. It's not just 1 or 2 employees, the entire staff is quitting. I wish I could see Evan's face when he finds out. Yes, this mass resignation was our plan all along. Everyone had been fed up with Evan's antics and Mr. Carson's failure to stop him. We had been planning to leave the company, and the incident with Evan hijacking my presentation at the exhibition was the final straw. After that, Emily and I joined our other resigned colleagues and celebrated with some delicious drinks. As I recalled the events of yesterday, I heard Evan's weak voice on the phone. If it comes to this, even you will do. Come to the office immediately. The phones have been ringing non-stop with inquiries, and we can't keep up. I was fired by you, Evan. I can't come to your company. I clearly refused and ended the call. As I hung up, I could still hear his pleading voice, but I had no more ties to that company. Evan continued to call me intermittently. However, I never answered, and the calls gradually decreased, eventually stopping completely after a week. He must have been too busy dealing with the company to keep calling me. I enjoyed my newfound peaceful life for a while. Later, I heard that the company went through a tough time. Even when they received inquiries, only Evan and Mr. Carson were there to handle them, which led to many misunderstandings. Eventually, a defect was found in the fabs presented at the exhibition, and the company received numerous complaints. Without me, who had developed it, Evan was at a loss. He couldn't answer questions about repair schedules or future prospects, angering the clients. Meanwhile, I continued to walk my usual commute route. As I passed my former company, Evan spotted me and rushed over, sweating profusely. You're finally here. I knew you would come, Mark. Now, fix that fabs machine. The clients are furious. Half crying, he clung to me, but I shook off his hand nonchalantly. You must be mistaken. I was fired from Carson Manufacturing. Then why are you here? I'm on my way to my new company. From now on, I'll be working at Davis Engineering, my new startup. Evan was stunned, his eyes wide, and he turned pale, collapsing to the ground. He tried to say something, but I ignored him and headed to my new office across from Carson Manufacturing. I had always wanted to have my own company. A place where I could freely create machines, a dream come true. And with like-minded colleagues, I wanted to create products that could compete globally. As I shared my vision, my co-workers supported my plan. What started as a dream became more serious as Evan worsened the work environment. We gradually prepared for the startup, and I had intended to stay at Carson Manufacturing until the launch of Fabs out of loyalty. But the betrayal at the exhibition by Evan and Mr. Carson sealed my decision to leave. In my new office, I looked out the shiny windows inside. The data Evan presented at the exhibition included bugs from before the revisions. I had the correct data and fixed parts ready for the real presentation. If he had apologized, I might have given him the revised data, but that's impossible now. I turned to see Emily standing there with a cup of coffee. Behind me, my former colleagues were smiling warmly. Everyone who had submitted their resignations had joined my new company. I looked around at the familiar faces. All reliable friends. Let's work together and give it our all. I look forward to working with you. Encouraged by my words, my colleagues responded with bright, beaming smiles. After that, we worked together to develop the improved version of Fabs. We addressed the previous issues and launched the final product online. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and seeing this, Evan reportedly collapsed to the floor in despair, saying, "This is the end for our company." Just as he predicted, the old company stopped receiving new orders. Everyone preferred the improved version from my new company. Nobody wanted to buy the problematic old product. Evan only received repair requests, but he couldn't handle them and was soon swamped with refund demands. Shortly after, the company went bankrupt. The elite newcomer, Mr. Carson's son, had long since fled and was working at an unrelated company. Meanwhile, Mr. Carson and Evan ended up with massive debts and eventually filed for bankruptcy. After that, they tried to find new jobs, but Evan, having never worked properly, was not hired anywhere for long. The other day, Emily confided in me with a serious expression. "Actually, the other day, I saw a soup kitchen in a park in the neighboring city for people in need. Among them, I think I saw someone who looked a lot like Mr. Carson and Evan. If it really was them, their fate is tragic. But it's certain that they are reaping the consequences of their actions." Since then, my company has been steadily growing. We've been continuously improving, incorporating customer feedback to make the machine more versatile with interchangeable attachments. I intend to keep cherishing the feelings of my employees and our gratitude towards our customers. And my relationship with Emily has also blossomed. I'll always stay by your side. I want to watch the company grow alongside you. It's been a year since she confessed her feelings, and we started dating. Next month, we're getting married. I want to continue building a vibrant workplace with Emily, who understands me better than anyone else. Hand in hand with her, I step into a new future. With all my might, I will continue working tirelessly today and every day.